The schoolhouse in America is a familiar sight. To many adults, almost too familiar. In sight, but relatively out of mind. When they do think of it, some people know school as a place where children are taken care of, conveniently for them, 5 or 6 hours a day, 9 or 10 months a year. Others think of it as a filling station for cramming youthful heads with facts and figures. Still others see school through the rosy glass of childhood memories. Then there are those who know it as a place where the why and how of democracy is learned. But what is democracy? Can a course be written on it? Is it more than a salute, more than a pledge, greater than patriotism? What is this thing we call democracy? Do the buildings of the national capital give the answer? National structures exist in other nations, but democracy is not architecture. Democracy lives in the lives of our people. People like Senator Jeffrey Ames. Educated as a lawyer, he is now both representative and leader of the people of his state. On this particular Wednesday, he studies, weighs, compares, matches pros and cons on a matter of increased aid to a foreign country. There's a man in his outer office with his own views on that subject. The senator's got to make up his own mind and risk his chance of re-election on his decision. Making decisions is a privilege of democracy. But the same day, at the same time, housewife Catherine Colmar also has decisions to make. In her living room in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, with her neighbors, she uses the democratic process. A chain broke on a swing in a public playground. Relatively unimportant, not like foreign aid, but a child might have been hurt. New equipment is needed. Money will have to be found for that. Mrs. Colmar finds money every day for home, children, husband's needs. Mother, wife, neighbor, she'll face a bigger problem before this Wednesday is over. And what of John Lawton, California manufacturer? 23 years ago, he was a truck driver for this electrical coil plant. Today, he's president and owner. He has not forgotten his old friends in the plant. He finds time to remember. He worked hard for his success and got responsibility. Now his business is making decisions. He leaves the truck driving and the coil making to others. Even so, he's got his hands full. He can say no to this salesman and stop an assembly line in Detroit. He's going to face a bigger problem today, have a more important decision to make, but he doesn't know it yet. Andrew Maley works in Lawton's plant. Came here about 5 years ago from a small farm, worked up to master machinist. He and Lawton aren't as well acquainted as some of the old-timers, but they're getting to know each other. Maley's respected by his fellow workers. He always gives a hand when the going gets rough. The way they work, the way they think, produces the goods the nation needs. The adjustment they make on a lathe, the way they settle a grievance, spells democracy. And Andrew Maley is also important to his family. Not just the paycheck he brings home or his love. No, his family affects the way he thinks, the way he makes decisions. And Fred Gorman, the farmer of Pennsylvania, are his decisions important? They are if the nation wants to eat. Mistakes by Fred Gorman and his fellow farmers could undermine the strength of the country. Their productivity, the rightness of their procedures, feed and sustain a whole people. What kind of training gave them the knowledge of the land? The seed in the back of Fred Gorman's truck can be cheap or expensive, good or poor. The decision is his. He can improve his herds for the future or make a quick profit now. He was trained to make up his mind about such things. He was trained to take his place as part of a living democracy. And his wife was brought up under the same system. She'll have a chance to apply her training before this day is over. There's a problem waiting for Fred Gorman. It came in the mail this morning. Fred's neighbors plan to build a system of reinforced drainage ditches emptying into a pond. That constitutes a problem for Fred and Mrs. Gorman. The best place for the pond is Fred's orchard. It's the lowest land in the area. The neighbors are asking Fred to come in on the project. He'll get better drainage too. But it also means that he'll have to give up his trees.
I wonder how Norm Erickson would feel if they were his trees. I bet he'd be glad to settle for the drainage he's got now.
Now, Fred, you know this whole area needs better drainage. The Ericksons, look at the trouble they've had the past several years. And you remember Tom Bartlett's silo was almost washed away last spring.
We haven't had so much trouble.
That's no guarantee, Fred. If we don't do something to help, our land is going to get like theirs. And you know it.
I don't like the idea of losing those trees.
There's the problem in a nutshell. A tough one to crack. His land and his neighbor's needs. A dictator could solve it for Fred, but he prefers to do his own thinking. Andrew Maley is tackling a hard problem this afternoon. He's come to John Lawton's office to present his fellow workers' views on a pension plan. John Lawton has his own opinions on that subject. One thing they both know, they live in one world, and they were both taught to settle their problems in the world in which they find themselves.
Hello, Bailey. Sit down.
Hiya, Mr. Lawton.
What's this trouble you want to see me about?
I don't know as I'd call it trouble exactly, Mr. Lawton. I'd like to show you the new pension plan that we've developed.
I thought we had discussed the pension plan previously.
We've discussed it over and over again, but now here is one item I'd like you to take a look at, right here.
Certainly Lawton fights back, but he knows that there are two sides to an argument. And Maley argues to support the responsibility that the men have placed on him. Not yet friends, they may never like each other, but they'll sweat it out together. The problem is mutual, much is involved. The democratic way is involved, and both men were taught to seek objectivity. Catherine Colmar is trying to be objective as she examines a new home. To buy or to continue to rent, that is the question. As she checks with the agent, she gathers all the facts and figures for this evening's discussion with her husband. If they do buy, their present furniture will have to fit into the new space.
And do you know the dimensions of the living room?
This room is a 15 by 10 room.
Well, these figures sound pretty good. My, what lovely ivy on the house next door. Who lives there?
I think you'll find those neighbors to be very congenial, Mrs. Colmeyer. An awfully nice family. As a matter of fact, he's the assistant chief at the local county court. A very bright fellow. And his wife is charming, too. They have a son, I believe, of the same age as your eldest.
Well, how nice. What's their name?
As a matter of fact, they have a daughter, too.
Oh? What's their name?
Goldstein. Martin Goldstein.
I wonder, do you mind if I go out and look at the yard again? I'd like to check the space out there.
The agent certainly stalled on that question. She knows religion isn't a question, not in any decent society. How will her husband feel? Is this a pertinent fact to add to all the others in her notebook? What does she herself really think? Is this an opportunity to find out? Facing Mrs. Goldstein and her son across that narrow strip of lawn, does she see before her a bridge or a gulf? Neighbors or strangers? It may be that she sees no problem at all. Maybe she's only wondering where the agent went to school. And Senator Ames, what does the Democratic way mean to him? There's that problem waiting for him in his outer office. He has worked hard for understanding. To serve the people of his... He has become something of an expert in foreign economics, forestry, agriculture. Now he faces a constituent who has his own ideas on those subjects. The senator must really hear him and understand him.
Well, I heard your speech from the floor of the Senate the other day. Senator, I just can't see it. Why should we American taxpayers have to pay for some broken-down, badly run economy halfway around the world just because its house isn't in order and ours is? It's bad business. And I can't see it, and a lot of other voters at home can't see it either.
Let's put it this way, Mr. Baker. How would you feel if you had most of the money of our town? If your neighbors were having a rough time of it, with nothing to sell and no purchasing power? Now, if you sat by and did nothing about them, how would your business be affected?
Well, it'd be hard, of course. But that wouldn't be my...
It would be hard, and it would be your business. Now, the same thing applies if you put this country in place of yourself in the same situation.
It's not only his own opinion the senator advances. There are many in his state who think as he does, others who do not. Which opinion will prevail? Educated himself, he must educate others. He must assume the mantle of leadership, yet know all the time that the opinion of the majority determines a democratic outcome. He must help mold that opinion. Problems every day, and the way they are solved determines the way the country functions. Dictate or discuss? The answer is clear. In this country, it is still possible to speak frankly on any given subject. A good merchant knows how to evaluate such public comments. He went to school. It is still possible to have freedom of choice. Problems every day. Yet there is an instinct to be civil and considerate of others. Differences of opinion? Surely. Yet differing goals can be reached without lies or bribery or violence. Developed within each citizen is the democratic spirit, the democratic method, the tools with which answers may be found. Those tools are sharpened in the schools of America. Their proper uses are made clear. Learning to read is more than just that. A man must learn to recognize lies, know the danger of the half-truth. A citizen must be able to speak in his own fashion.
Neil, would you like to read now?
But Peter had a bright lantern which showed him the way, and soon he had come all the way.
That was fine. Karen, would you like to read now?
The statesman must know how to make others listen, how to evaluate and transmit what he reads. The foundation of national debate on great issues is built stone by stone in the classroom. History is freedom's weapon, fine minds speaking simple truths through the centuries, and sometimes even more important, the lament of tens of thousands dying in a gas chamber. The course of history and the way in which the course was changed, there is a relation between then and now.
Perhaps there's a connection between what the men of the Constitutional Convention achieved here and what all of you did last week when you elected George to represent you on the school council. How about it, George? Did the class give you the power to be their boss, or did they appoint you to speak for them?
George isn't our boss. We tell him what to do. We're still the boss, all of us.
The housewife taught in this class will know that free citizens must be free from fear. The injustice of the past can kindle the indignation of today. Strange words sound strange until the language is learned, and the ways of the people who speak it must be learned too. Understanding brings respect and liking, a sense of sharing.
A team consists of 15 players, whereas soccer requires but 11. Now I imagine a lot of you are still thinking about the big game last weekend. Henry, let's hear you tell us about it in French.
Well, samedi dernier, nous, notre école, tous les étudiants notre école nous jouions football. Football. Well, how do you say football in French?
You're right, Henry. It's almost exactly the same in France as it is here, although they play the game a bit differently. Some say it's a bit rougher. Well, how did the game come out?
Faith in the United Nations starts in school. The tolerance of different ways within one world is taught. One world, within one factory, men may speak different languages, or the same words may mean various things to different men. The finding of a common ground begins in school. The tools for living are further tempered in chemistry lab. Of course, learning how a basic oxide unites with an acid helps future chemists. Here, too, are future homemakers and lawyers, yes, and farmers and realtors, industrialists and craftsmen and senators. They are learning to check and prove, to balance and evaluate. None are born with those skills. They all have to be taught them. Here a boy may learn how to drain an orchard, or put his arithmetic to work on a neighborhood problem. Fred Gorman was taught the way to find the answer to his problem in school. He will not forget today. Mrs. Colmar was once an American schoolgirl. She will weigh all the factors on the house. John Lawton and Andrew Maley may not come to a meeting of minds, but they know how to effect a working compromise democratically. The method is the important thing. Senator Ames will do his level best to lead, and his constituent still has an unmarked ballot in his pocket. How will today's children function in a dangerous world? What means will they use to carve the future? Will they be equipped to find the answers to tomorrow's problems? Will they be able to buy a house or run a farm? Are the people who tolerate such schools as these really concerned about democracy's future? Can schools like these be trusted to clarify the minds of democracy's children? There's a reasonable doubt that youngsters can find clarity in schools like this. A teacher can't hammer out America's future with nothing but his bare hands. An overworked teacher has too much work to do, that's obvious. And an underpaid teacher may eventually lose her eagerness, her courage, her self-esteem. Or is America too busy to care? Are the needs greater than the most resourceful nation in the world can meet? This classroom is a challenge to democracy. This teacher cannot be asked to meet that challenge alone. A school like this holds more promise for America's future. Alert parents see to it that the school provides a chance for the youngsters to fulfill their potentialities. Regimentation is considered primitive in good American schools. The children have an opportunity to stretch the muscles of their own initiative. They can fly and fancy any place they please. The air age acquires personal meaning. It's not easy to learn the meaning of freedom. The youngsters are learning responsibility, gaining that all too necessary innate sense of right and wrong. In this nation, that's the right, according to the law, of every child. That right must be extended to more and more children every day. Rights. The right of access to information. The right to think and to speak without fear. The right to work toward chosen goals. Schoolchildren, yes. But in schools, they learn the ways of liberty which they must practice tomorrow to keep America free. As congressmen, businessmen, housewives, farmers, labor leaders, as Americans, their decisions and the way they make them will determine the nature of our democracy. Today in our schools, we can secure blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity.